My psycho father beat me with a bat, my brother helped destroy my career, and my family called it tough love. I got revenge, but it cost me everything. My dad has always been an insecure little man trying to play tough. Ever since me and my older brother Dylan were kids, he was obsessed with turning us into real men. His version of that, waking us up at 5 a.m. every day for what he called warrior training, which basically meant punching each other until someone bled. If you cried or tried to block too much, he'd force you outside in nothing but your underwear, holding cinder blocks above your head. "Men don't get cold," he'd bark while we stood there shivering, lips turning blue. I always thought it was insane, but Dylan, he loved that crap. By the time he was 12, he was sleeping on bare concrete because beds make you soft. He'd do push-ups until he puked, then keep going while Dad filmed it for Facebook with captions like, "This is how you raise wolves, not sheep." Meanwhile, I tried to prove myself in different ways. I got straight A's, led the debate team, and helped tutor kids after school. But when I showed Dad my report card, he ripped it in half. "Books are for pussies who can't throw a punch," he told me. "Your brother broke a kid's nose yesterday. That's what I call progress." The moment I realized Dylan was too far gone came during Thanksgiving when I was 16. We were all eating dinner when he suddenly stood up and punched himself square in the face. Blood sprayed across the turkey. "Pain is just weakness leaving the body," he said, grinning, his teeth red. Dad stood up and clapped like he just watched Rocky win a fight. Mom didn't even blink, just kept chewing. That's when I started pretending. I'd wrap my hands for practice but never hit hard. I acted excited about Dad's stupid Navy SEAL documentaries. Even started dating this girl Brittany, who loved picking fights at parties, just to see more alpha for Dad. But behind the scenes, I was seeing a therapist and secretly applying to colleges across the country. Eventually, I made it to Berkeley, majoring in social work with a focus on toxic masculinity and trauma. By 24, I had my MSW, worked with at-risk youth, and had a life I built from scratch. I had an apartment with my girlfriend Elena, who teaches ballet. Dad would have called her useless. I ran workshops on healthy masculinity, and even adopted a rescue dog named Mochi. Then Dad called one day to invite me to what he called Dylan's accomplishment ceremony. I figured it was some fighting competition, and part of me went hoping maybe, just maybe, they'd changed. The rest of me was just morbidly curious. I should have known better the second Dylan opened the door. He looked like a corpse dipped in muscle. Fresh bruises, open cuts, knuckles swollen beyond recognition. He walked with a limp. "Little bro," he grinned, pulling me into a hug that felt like getting crushed by bones. That's when Dad saw me. His face instantly went from fake friendly to disgust. "Jesus, did you get softer? You look like a damn woman." Before I could say a word, he grabbed my wrist. "Feel that? Weak, like a girl's." Then he turned to Dylan. "Show him what a real man's hand feels like." Dylan held up his mangled hands. Fingers twisted, scar tissue everywhere. "Been training with broken glass, bro. Can't feel a thing anymore." Dad beamed. "Beautiful." That's when I saw the table, laid out like some horror show. Brass knuckles, a bat with nails, shattered bottles. "Tonight," Dad said, "you boys are gonna fight for real. Winner gets my respect. Loser ain't no son of mine." I turned to leave, but Dad stepped in front of the door. "You're not my son anyway. Got your degree, your soft little hands, probably let that ballerina run your life." He picked up the bat. "Maybe this'll finally turn you into a man." Dylan was already shadowboxing like this was just a game. "Come on, bro, like old times. Don't worry, I'll go easy. You're soft now." Then Dad swung. I ducked just in time. The bat slammed into the wall behind me. Elena stood frozen in place. Dylan laughed like it was all a joke. "Yeah, that's it. Fight back." Dad swung again, this time grazing my shoulder. I felt something tear, and warm blood soaked through my shirt. "Fight like a man," he screamed, charging again. I grabbed the nearest chair and flung it at him, then bolted toward the kitchen. But Dylan tackled me from behind. "You're not going anywhere until you fight." They both started kicking me while I curled up to shield my head, and then Elena vanished. 2 minutes later, she returned with the cops. Dad was still yelling about turning boys into men as they handcuffed him. Elena was apologizing, saying she hoped I wasn't embarrassed, asking if I still wanted to be with her. But everything around me felt muffled, like I was underwater. All I could think was, I love this woman, and I'm done letting my family control any part of my life, and I meant it. Paramedics were still trying to convince me to go to the hospital when a DV specialist showed up. The moment she saw the blood on my shoulder, she started documenting everything. Elena stood beside me, still recording with her phone for backup. I gave my full statement, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. From the back seat of the patrol car, I could still hear my dad shouting like a lunatic, ranting about liberal conspiracies and how the government was out to destroy real American families. A bunch of neighbors had come outside to watch the whole thing unfold. I spotted Mrs. Patel from next door standing on her porch, just slowly shaking her head, while Dad raged about some agenda to feminize men. And Dylan, he switched gears in an instant. The second the cops arrived, he dropped the tough guy act and started performing. Told them we were just roughhousing, that things had gotten out of hand, but it was nothing serious. All while pretending to be calm and reasonable, he was furiously texting on his phone. Not long after, my own phone started buzzing like crazy. I'd forgotten I was still part of the old family group chat. Notifications lit up my screen. Texts from Dylan were already spreading. Brother snapped, attacked dad, had to call the cops on his own father. Always knew those liberal colleges would ruin him. Within 10 minutes, I had 14 missed calls from various aunts, uncles, and cousins, all eating it up. That's when Mom finally showed up. She walked out of the house looking like she was headed to brunch. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, like she'd been rehearsing for this. She went straight up to the cops and calmly explained how it was all a big misunderstanding. Pointed at the blood on my shirt and claimed I'd probably injured myself during our usual roughhousing. When they asked her for an official statement, she declined. Said she didn't want to get dragged into her son's little squabbles. While the officers dealt with her and my dad, the domestic violence specialist pulled me aside. She explained that since Dad had no prior record, there was a good chance he'd be out on bail within a day or two. I had a decision to make: press charges right away based on the current evidence, or hold off and try to build a stronger case. The problem was, the 60-hour clock for collecting certain types of evidence was already ticking. I went ahead and pressed charges on the spot. The moment I signed the paperwork, my phone blew up again. This time, Dylan had taken it a step further. He posted screenshots to the family WhatsApp group. Screenshots of old therapy notes I'd written years ago. Stuff I'd kept private in a journal that somehow ended up in his hands. He highlighted every angry entry, every sentence where I wished Dad would disappear. Of course, none of the context was included. No mention of the abuse that led me to write those things in the first place. The next morning, Elena called me during her shift at the hospital. Her voice was shaking. Someone had slashed all 4 of her tires in the staff parking lot. No witnesses, no camera footage, just 4 shredded tires. An hour after that, I got a call from my boss at the youth center. They'd received an anonymous complaint about me. Some concerned citizen had warned them I was violent and mentally unstable, said I'd recently assaulted my father. While I was trying to handle the tire situation, I got a text from Mom. "Why are you doing this to us? Is this what your education taught you? How to destroy your family?" I missed a crucial meeting with the prosecutor because I was stuck waiting on a tow truck. Meanwhile, Dad's lawyer had already started building his narrative that this was just a heated family argument gone wrong, that I was some long-estranged son who showed up out of nowhere and caused chaos. The prosecutor later called, irritated I hadn't made the meeting, said my statement could have made a big difference. 2 days later, Dad made bail. Mom had drained her retirement fund to cover it, and the first thing he did after getting out, he drove to my apartment, snapped a selfie outside, and posted it on Facebook. The caption read, "Just checking on my son, worried about his mental health after his little episode." I spent the next 3 days installing security cameras and changing all the locks. Elena suggested we crash at her parents' place for a bit, but I could see it in her eyes. She was scared. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. This wasn't what she'd signed up for. Things finally boiled over between us. Our first real fight happened after she said maybe I was bringing danger into her life that didn't have to be there. Right in the middle of that argument, there was a knock at the door. My neighbor stood there, holding his phone. He had a Ring camera that had caught something weird, footage of my dad's truck parked outside my apartment 3 days before Dylan's ceremony. The video showed him sitting in the truck for hours, watching. At one point, he got out and opened the trunk. The angle caught a glimpse of what looked like a baseball bat. So yeah, it wasn't some heat-of-the-moment thing. Dad had been planning this, but before I could send the footage to my lawyer, I got another call from work. They were strongly encouraging me to take a voluntary leave of absence. The anonymous complaints hadn't stopped, and now some parents were expressing concerns about me being around their kids. The smear campaign was running at full speed. Mom was out there playing the victim, telling her book club I'd always been troubled, that she and Dad had done their best, but I just refused to be helped. Dad was painting himself as the misunderstood father figure who only wanted his sons to grow up strong. Dylan played the role of the loyal older brother, trying to hold the family together while dealing with his unstable sibling. Then my college essay showed up online. It was the one I wrote about surviving abuse and breaking the cycle of violence. But someone, definitely Dylan, had edited it before posting. He stripped out every mention of Dad's abuse. What was left looked like a bitter rant, just my anger, resentment, and talk about wanting to escape. Out of context, it made me look like I'd always been the problem. And then things started going wrong at work. Emails I never wrote started showing up in people's inboxes, stuff sent from my account to parents of my teen clients, inappropriate, weird messages. Rhoda had traced the activity back to Dad's house, but of course they couldn't prove he was the one behind the keyboard. 3 coworkers who had been in my corner started to distance themselves. Later I found out Mom had called them, saying she was worried about my history of violence and mental instability. She made it sound like I was dangerous. The legal process moved painfully slow while my life kept unraveling faster. Dad's lawyer somehow got hold of my juvenile therapy records, files that were supposed to be sealed. They were from when I was 13, after an ER visit that my parents had written off as a sports injury. A doctor got suspicious and recommended therapy. Now those records were being twisted to show I had a history of instability. I was trying to save what little reputation I had left, so when Dylan offered to meet at a public cafe, claiming he wanted to calm things down, I agreed. I shouldn't have. The entire time he was recording me, I talked about our childhood, the trauma, how I'd wish Dad would just disappear when I was a kid. Dylan captured all of it. Later, that recording got edited, chopped up, rearranged. I wished he would disappear became I wanted him gone. And then it hit the news. Social worker threatens father's life. That was the headline. Dylan was quoted as a concerned family member. And the reporter? Someone Dad used to play poker with. Then Dad dropped another bomb. He'd already transferred all his assets to Dylan months ago. If I sued, there'd be nothing to win. Everything had been carefully planned. This wasn't about one violent night. This was full-blown destruction. Elena's parents saw the news coverage and told her to leave me. Said they didn't want their daughter connected to violence. She stood up for me, but I could see it. Something had changed. She jumped every time her phone rang, got nervous whenever we went out. I could tell she was scared. And honestly, who could blame her? I eventually got a restraining order against Dad, but the judge ruled that Mom and Dylan weren't a threat since they hadn't physically attacked me. He talked about complicated family dynamics and even suggested mediation. Meanwhile, Dad used the restraining order to avoid court, with his lawyer claiming he was too traumatized to face me. During what I thought would be my last trip to the family house just to pick up some of my old things, I planted a small recorder in the living room. I told myself it was just in case, for safety. What I ended up capturing was chilling. Dad and Dylan calmly planning their next steps, talking about how to break me psychologically, because that's what warriors do to their enemies. The recording laid it all out. Every move was intentional, every hit to my reputation calculated. They knew exactly where to strike. My job, my relationship, my public image. Dad spoke about it like a war strategy. And Dylan just sat there, nodding, ready to follow orders. But I was out of moves. My career was falling apart. My relationship was hanging by a thread. And the people I should have been able to count on were the ones destroying me. The system I worked for, believed in, had no tools for this kind of targeted manipulation. I sat in my apartment surrounded by court papers, emails, screenshots, police reports, just overwhelmed. And that's when it hit me. If I was going to fight back, I might have to start playing by their rules. The thought made me sick. But what choice did I have? Elena found me sitting there, buried in documents. She sat beside me, took my hand, and asked the one question I'd been avoiding. What are you willing to sacrifice to win this? I didn't know, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. That night, I got my answer. Lisa, one of Dad's old co-workers, showed up at the youth center's fundraiser. She was excited, smiling, talking about this amazing new guy she'd started dating. Then she showed me his photo. It was Dad. They'd met at the holiday party last year, the same one where I introduced her to my parents. And now, he'd gotten inside my professional world. A few days later, childhood photos of me started surfacing on social media. Dylan had gone through old family photo albums and posted carefully chosen pictures. One of them showed me crying during warrior training, captioned, "Always been weak." Another showed Dylan, bleeding but grinning, with the caption, "Real warrior." The comments were brutal. People praised Dad's parenting style and questioned how someone as mentally unstable as me could be trusted to work with vulnerable kids. Then Mom called for a family meeting at my aunt's house, said she wanted to help smooth things over. When I showed up, it was clear this wasn't a meeting, it was a tribunal. She had gathered a bunch of relatives to confront me. She claimed I'd always been dramatic. The bruises in old photos? Just normal roughhousing between boys, she said. My aunt brought up the time CPS got involved when I was 9. But instead of acknowledging the teacher who'd reported visible injuries, they reframed it as me making up stories for attention. Things got worse when one of my client's parents reached out to Dylan. They'd seen the news coverage and decided Dylan was the kind of strong male role model their son needed. Dylan jumped on it, even adopting the exact name of my mentorship program. He began posting about real guidance for young men, always taking little jabs at my soft approach. I went back and listened again to the recording from my parents' house. Dad's voice was sharp and controlled, walking Dylan through manipulation tactics, how to find someone's weak points, how to isolate them from their support, how to make them doubt their own reality. Dylan took it all in like it was gospel. Then I got a notice from my professional review board. A hearing had been scheduled. Several complaints had come in. Parents who'd never even met me suddenly had concerns about my stability. And of course the hearing was set for 2 days before Dad's criminal trial. I'd be forced to divide my focus, choose which battle to prepare for. In a moment of desperation, I created fake social media accounts and joined the online communities that supported Dad. I praised his parenting posts, commented about how society was becoming soft, even shared his quotes. It made me sick, but I needed to know what they were planning. That's how I found out about the warrior camp. Dad was launching a program for boys based on the exact abuse I'd lived through. My trauma turned into a curriculum, a selling point. Then I got a call from my best friend from grad school. She told me, voice full of guilt, that she was withdrawing her reference. Her therapy practice had started receiving calls, asking about my mental health during our MSW program, wondering if I'd ever shown signs of violence. The story wasn't just staying in the family anymore. It was infecting every area of my life. So I did something I thought might help. I posted my unedited therapy notes online, hoping that honesty and full transparency would clear the air. But it backfired, badly. People focused on the raw emotions in those entries. Every time I mentioned anger, every time I wished Dad would vanish, the comments praised Dad's discipline, claimed I clearly hadn't had enough of it. The prosecutor on my assault case called me with a plea deal. Dad would plead to a misdemeanor, take anger management classes, and avoid jail time. He'd never have to admit guilt. Meanwhile, I'd have to accept that watered-down version of the truth. If I refused, we'd go to trial, and Dad's lawyer was ready to go scorched earth. More hospital records started showing up in Discovery, ER visits from when I was a kid, everyone listed as sports injury, Mom's signature on every intake form. She'd been there for all of it, and never once questioned what was happening. To anyone really looking, the pattern was obvious, but legally, none of it was solid enough to prove abuse. Dad's reach kept expanding. My former thesis advisor, who'd written me glowing recommendations just a couple years ago, posted online about how he'd always sensed something unstable in me. The revisionist history wasn't just happening in the present, it was rewriting my past. Every accomplishment was now framed as manipulation. The restraining order against Dad, evidence that I used the system to attack family, the voluntary leave from work, proof I wasn't fit to be around kids. I was losing control of my own story, and Elena, she was stuck in the middle. Her boss at the dance studio, now one of Dad's clients, told her she had to stop supporting me publicly or risk losing her job. She chose me, but we felt the consequences immediately. Half our income was gone overnight. Her parents offered help, but only if she came home alone. I started documenting everything, cameras in every room. I recorded every call, screenshotted every text. I checked the locks constantly. I tracked Dad's social media. I watched Dylan's movements like a detective. The paranoia was exhausting, but I couldn't stop. I was becoming the person they claimed I already was. The breaking point came over cereal. Alenko had bought name brand instead of generic, and I exploded. I didn't even recognize my own voice at first. The words that came out of my mouth, they were Dad's. His exact phrases, about waste, about weakness, and Alenka, she went pale. She recognized them too. Dylan's ex-girlfriend reached out through a mutual friend. She had a USB drive containing evidence of Dad's financial fraud, years of tax evasion and embezzlement from his business. But she had gotten it by accessing his computer without permission during their relationship. Using it would be illegal, but it might have been the only leverage I had. Mother filed for divorce, but the timing made her intentions clear. By legally separating her assets, she could protect them from any civil suit I might file. Her lawyer, who had been Dad's friend for years, painted me as the aggressive son who had driven a wedge between two loving parents. The divorce was tactical, not real. I was bleeding money on legal fees. Between the criminal case and the defamation suit, I had to retain 2 lawyers. Elena's savings went into retainers and filings. We moved into her parents' basement, which felt like a quiet kind of defeat. The grocery store incident was a trap. Dad was coincidentally shopping at the same time as me, and somehow ended up in the same aisle. When I tried to walk away, he stepped in front of me. When I moved past him, he claimed I'd shoved him. The security footage would make me look like the aggressor. Him? Just an old man trying to shop. My suspension letter came on the same day as Dad's first podcast episode. He launched Raising Warriors in a Weak World, using our family as his example. He described my education as indoctrination, and my profession as enabling weakness in young men. With my license gone, everything I'd built to escape him began to fall apart. Mom offered mediation with conditions. I would have to drop the charges, apologize publicly for misunderstanding Dad's parenting, and admit I had long-standing anger issues. In return, they'd stop the public campaign against me. She framed it as generous, a way to restore the family. When I tried to expose the warrior camp, it backfired. A parent pulled their child from the program after my warning and blamed me, said I'd sabotaged their child's growth. Soon posts circulated online accusing me of being a vindictive social worker attacking children. Elena's sister, who had supported us at first, started repeating Dad's talking points during family dinners. She asked Elena if I was really worth the chaos I was causing in their family. Now it was infecting her family too. In order to access certain records, I had to make a public statement claiming I had misunderstood Dad's methods. I knew it would be used against me later, but without it, I couldn't get the documents I needed. Each compromise chipped away at my integrity, exactly as Dad had intended. The bank records clearly showed Dad's financial crimes, but they also included a loan I'd taken from the family business at 18 to help pay for college. I'd repaid it with interest, but Dad's lawyer spun it as theft, another example of me taking from the family. Then the trial date was moved up with no notice. Instead of 3 weeks, I had 3 days to prepare. Dad's lawyer had requested it, knowing I wouldn't be ready. Every move was intentional, every step designed to break me down. Recordings revealed the bigger goal. Dad didn't just want to win, he wanted to ruin my ability to ever work with vulnerable people again. This wasn't just personal. Years earlier, I'd reported a similar family to CPS, and one of Dad's friends lost custody. This was revenge. As part of Mom's divorce case, I was called as a hostile witness. I had to admit to a pattern of family violence. Technically true, but completely out of context. It made me look like just another abuser in a long line of them. Eventually, I threatened Dylan. I told him I'd expose his steroid use unless he recanted. It worked. He gave me proof of Dad's manipulation, but the win felt empty. Elena had watched me cross that line. She saw me using the same tactics I claimed to stand against. Dylan's voice echoed in my mind while I reviewed the evidence. You didn't beat him, you became him. The evidence was challenged immediately. The court questioned if it had been coerced. The judge even considered excluding it. It was clear, this wasn't just a legal battle anymore. Each tactical win that used Dad's methods felt like a personal loss. I was becoming a reflection of him, just smarter, more desperate. The cameras, the fake accounts, the threats, the manipulation. I had become exactly what he wanted me to. Parents of former clients began enrolling in Dad's program. They saw my name in the news and decided his way must have worked. The same harmful methods that had destroyed Dylan were now being taught to more boys, and I couldn't stop it. Witnesses dropped out. Some were harassed. Others were scared. Businesses were targeted. The judge raised concerns about intimidation from both sides, even suggested a mistrial. The courtroom had become a battlefield. As a last resort, I accessed Dad's email through our old shared family computer at my aunt's house. I pretended to seek reconciliation, played the role of the son trying to make peace while quietly copying everything I could. The emails confirmed it all, direct coordination between Dad, Dylan, and Mom. It was planned, but accessing them violated the restraining order. A truth emerged from those emails that shattered my assumptions. Dad genuinely believed his methods created strong men. He saw my education and career as confirmation of his failure as a father. In his mind, he was saving future generations from the weakness he hadn't managed to beat out of me. My recorded therapy sessions with teen clients surfaced during discovery. Every time I had shared my own trauma to connect with struggling kids was reframed as projection or failure to maintain professional boundaries. What had been part of my healing became evidence of professional incompetence. The breakthrough came when a second neighbor revealed they had security footage of the assault. Clear video of Dad attacking me with a bat, but sharing it meant exposing that neighbor to retaliation. They had young sons, the same age I was when it all began. I made the choice to use the footage, despite the neighbor begging me not to. Within days, Dad's supporters went after their business. Negative reviews, harassment, threats, another family being torn apart because of our war. The pattern of collateral damage kept spreading. Dad's lawyer used it all perfectly. Every witness who had spoken up on my behalf had suffered somehow. The public saw me not as a whistleblower, but as someone bringing chaos to the community. The local news framed it as a family dispute tearing the town apart. My professional contacts distanced themselves. Personal relationships collapsed. Dad still had his story. Strong father, betrayed by weak sons. I had evidence, and anger, and the slow realization that I had started becoming what I was fighting. The judge ordered mediation before trial. We sat across the table, father and son, with a neutral third party trying to find middle ground. The same courthouse where I had once supported abuse victims was now hosting my own descent into becoming what I hated. Both our lives were in pieces. Dad's business was falling apart under the weight of the scandal. My career was already gone. Mutual destruction had been achieved. Two men locked in conflict, destroying everything around them. The mediator tried to help us find something worth saving. Dad proposed a deal: drop the charges, admit to mutual misunderstanding, walk away clean. We'd both be bloodied but legally free. The alternative was a trial that could destroy whoever lost. During mediation, the fire alarm went off. We evacuated to the parking lot, standing in the cold like I once had as a child, holding cinder blocks. Dad smirked. I knew he remembered, and that's when I realized he'd planned it. His friend in building maintenance had pulled the alarm. He was still controlling the setting, still playing games. Then Mother's journal turned up during house clearing. Years of documented abuse, goodbye letter drafts, mentions of my name. But because of marital privilege, it wasn't admissible in court. The evidence that could help me would destroy her. There was no such thing as a clean win anymore. I was left with one choice: pursue full justice through trial, force Mom to testify, shatter her remaining peace, or settle, let Dad walk away with no real consequence, but protect what little she had left. Justice or mercy. I couldn't have both. I thought about the boys still going through Dad's program, the poison continuing, the cycle repeating. But I also thought about that journal, Mom's failed escape attempts, everything she'd already endured. This decision wouldn't just define the outcome of the case, it would define who I became.